Delphi is an ancient city that has been inhabited since 1600 BC. Rich in archaeological finds, the site has time after time yielded evidence of many ancient legends. Among these discoveries were the Scriptures of Delphi. There are some who think these scriptures are a record of oral tradition that were recorded much later in Greece. Others think they are a hoax, and still others think they were written by the oracle at Delphi. Whatever the case may be, I'll let you be the judge. For those who don't know, the oracle at Delphi was more of a tradition rather than one person. Whoever became the high priestess at the Temple of Delphi was referred to as the Pythia, although most who lived outside of Delphi would refer to her as the oracle at Delphi, or simply the oracle. The Pythia would enter a meditative trance-like state while filled with the spirit of Apollo and give prophecies to those who visited the temple. All the prophecies were spoken in dactylic hexameter. The tradition of naming a priestess to become a new oracle likely began sometime between 1400 and 800 BC, and didn't end until the temple at Delphi was sacked by Rome in 390 AD. During those many hundreds of years, the many Pythia gave countless prophecies to supplicants, some of which have been recorded in the annals of history. We say 800 BC as a potential starting point, because that's when the first recorded stories of prophecies from the oracle take place, notably the one given to Lycurgus, the Spartan lawmaker, who based the entirety of Spartan law on the prophecies given by the oracle. When the oracle said, "Love of money and nothing else will ruin Sparta," Lycurgus had all the gold and silver rounded up and minted a new bulky currency made of iron that was difficult to carry around. All this to discourage greed. At one point, the oracle at Delphi was famously asked, "Who is the wisest man in Athens?" To which the oracle responded, "You will find none wiser than Socrates." And after hearing of this, Socrates spent his entire life hoping to prove the oracle wrong. The story you are about to hear is from the aforementioned Scriptures of Delphi. It is the story of a young man named Ambrogio, who was subjected to a number of curses and blessings bestowed upon him by the gods, supposedly sometime around 450 BC. The results of his many afflictions create what some believe to be the first vampire. Ambrogio was a young adventurer, born and raised in Italy. He had longed to travel to Greece to have his fortune told by the oracle of Delphi. When he was an adult, he got on a boat and sailed to the western edge of Greece, near Astakos. He traveled east until he eventually reached the city of Delphi. Delphi was home to a great temple of Apollo, the sun god. It was also the home of the Pythia, better known as the oracles. The Pythia would sit in a chamber within the temple and speak of prophecies, inspired by Apollo, to those who came to seek the oracle's wisdom. When Ambrogio finally arrived at the temple, he would speak to the Pythia. The Pythia, whose words were often cryptic, said only a few words: "The curse, the moon, the blood will run." Ambrogio couldn't sleep that night. He stayed awake outside of the temple, pondering the meaning of the Pythia's words. As the sun rose in the morning, he realized that he had not slept. As he walked back towards the town, he saw a beautiful woman, dressed in white robes, walking to the temple. He ran over to her and introduced himself. Her name was Selene, and she was a maiden of the temple. Her sister was the oracle, and so Selene tended to the temple and took care of her sister while in her entranced state. For the next few days, Ambrogio met Selene at dawn before she entered the temple. They soon fell in love. On his last day in Greece, Ambrogio asked Selene to marry him and return with him to Italy. She agreed. He said he would make the preparations, then meet her at dawn the next morning at their meeting spot outside the temple. However, Apollo the sun god had been watching. He himself had taken a liking to the beautiful Selene and was enraged that Ambrogio, a mortal, would dare take one of his maidens away. At sunset that night, Apollo appeared to Ambrogio, and in his fury, Apollo cursed Ambrogio, so that from that day forth, a mere touch of Apollo's sunlight would burn his flesh. This effectively prohibited Ambrogio from meeting with Selene the next morning before their departure to Italy. Having no alternative, Ambrogio fled to the caves and sought the protection of Hades. Hades and Ambrogio came to a deal, but Ambrogio would have to leave his soul with Hades in the underworld as down payment. Hades would then give him a magical wooden bow with 11 arrows. Ambrogio was to offer his skill to Artemis, sister of Apollo, and goddess of the moon and hunting. The goal was for Ambrogio to gain Artemis's favor and steal her silver bow, which he would then deliver to Hades in exchange for his soul. Should he return without the silver bow, he would have to live in the underworld forever, never to return to Selene. Having no other choice, Ambrogio agreed. Ambrogio had no way to contact Selene. He had parchments, but no writing implement, so he took his bow and one of the arrows and used it to kill a swan. Using its feather as a pen and its blood as the ink, he wrote her a note explaining that he could not meet with her, but would find a way for them to be together. He left the note in their meeting place and ran off to find a place to hide from the sunlight. Naturally, Selene was devastated when she found the note, but she kept working at the temple as she did not want to anger Apollo any further. The next morning, Selene went back to the meeting place, but once again Ambrogio was not there. She saw another piece of parchment with writing in blood. It was a love poem from Ambrogio. Before morning, for 44 days, Ambrogio slew a swan and used its blood to write Selene a love poem. After draining the blood and taking a single feather, he offered the body of the swan as a tribute to Artemis. On the 45th night, Ambrogio had only one arrow left, and it was in rather poor shape. He shot it at a swan and missed. The arrow sailed off into the distance. He had neither the blood to write Selene's poem nor the swan to sacrifice to Artemis. He fell to the ground and wept. Seeing how good of a hunter and how dedicated of a follower Ambrogio had been, Artemis came down to him. Ambrogio begged Artemis to let him borrow her bow and an arrow so he could kill one last bird and leave one final note to Selene. Artemis took pity on him and agreed to let him borrow her silver bow and one arrow. He took the bow and in desperation ran to the caves that led to Hades. Artemis realized what was happening and cast her own curse upon Ambrogio. Now the touch of silver to his skin would burn him and cause him great pain. Since the bow was made of silver, Ambrogio was forced to drop it before he could deliver it to Hades. Ambrogio explained everything about how he had lost his ability to walk under the sun to Apollo, his ability to touch silver to her, and how he had now lost his soul to Hades. Ambrogio fell to his knees and begged for mercy. Artemis took pity on Ambrogio for a second time and decided to give him one last chance. She then made him as powerful of a hunter as she was, with the speed, strength, and immortality of a god, and fangs for him to draw the blood of his prey so he could write his poems to Selene. In exchange for this immortality, he would have to agree to a deal. He and Selene would have to escape Apollo's temple and worship only Artemis forever. The catch was that Artemis was a virgin goddess, and all of her followers had to remain chaste and unmarried. So Ambrogio was never allowed to touch Selene again. They could never kiss, never touch, never have children. With few other options, Ambrogio agreed. At least this way he and Selene could be together. He killed another swan and left Selene a note, telling her to meet him on a ship at the docks. Before dawn the next morning, she saw the note and ran away before Apollo could notice. When Selene arrived at the dock, she found Ambrogio's ship and met him down in the hull. There was a wooden coffin, and on the coffin was a note telling Selene to order the ship's captain to set sail and to open the coffin only after the sun had set. She did as the note said, and after sunset, she opened the coffin to find Ambrogio alive and well. The couple sailed to Ephesus and lived happily for many years, staying in the caves during the day and worshipping Artemis at her grand temple every night. Ambrogio had never aged, but the years had not been kind to Selene, and she soon fell ill. As his soul still resided with Hades, it would be impossible for the two of them to spend the afterlife together. That night, Ambrogio went into the woods and found a white swan swimming alone in a small lake. He killed the swan and offered it to Artemis, begging for her to make Selene immortal so they could stay together forever. Artemis appeared to him. Thankful for his dedication and worship, she offered him one last deal. Artemis told Ambrogio that he could touch Selene just once, to drink her blood. Doing so would kill her mortal body, but from then on, her blood mixed with his could create eternal life for any who drink of it. If he did this, Artemis would see to it that they stayed together forever. Ambrogio wanted to refuse, not wanting to kill his beloved. But after telling Selene what happened, Selene begged him to do it. After much convincing, he bit her neck and took her blood into his body. As he set her limp body down, Selene began to radiate with light and raised up towards the sky. Ambrogio watched as Selene's glowing spirit lifted to meet Artemis at the moon. When she arrived, the moon lit up with a brilliant light. Selene became the goddess of the moonlight, and every night she would reach down with her rays of light to the earth and finally touch her beloved Ambrogio, as well as all of their children, those who carried the blood of Ambrogio and Selene.